Arizona. You're looking at the Grand Wizard, Warlord, vocal cords so vicious. And I don't have to show riches to pull off it, and recognize I'm a captain, you a lieutenant. I can say what I wanna say, ain't nothing to it. Gangsta rap made me do it. If I call you a nigga, ain't nothing to it. Gangsta rap made me do it. I can act like an animal, ain't nothing to it. Gangsta rap made me do it. If I eat you like a cannibal, ain't nothing to it. Gangsta rap made me do it.
Check 1 2. Epic, are you there? We got 4 minutes.
I am here.
So we got 4 minutes and then another 10 minutes after that. So welcome into the backstage microcosm, everybody, if there is anybody. I don't know. That was a pretty good show we did last night with John. It seems like Satan became the big topic of discussion today on the radio. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I didn't get to hear it today because I was busy today. Work hard, and then I'm moving too, so it's like really difficult. But I got to tell a story at the bar and grill. They remodeled the bar and grill down the street, and so they just opened it up today. So it hasn't been open for a week, and everybody kind of met down there. It's kind of a local hangout,
Right.
Here in the islands. And so I had the stage for a moment there, not literally but figuratively, telling my story about the giant crab. So we got 4 minutes. When you hear it, I can tell it in 4 minutes. Giant crab story.
Please do, but don't mind me. In the meantime, I'm gonna have to do some stuff here to get prepared.
Sure enough.
Go ahead. Tell that story.
I lived in San Diego for a long time. I lived in Hawaii. I lived in San Diego, and when I was living in San Diego, my best friends there are all scuba divers, and my good friend Andrew. I won't say his last name, of course, right? Is like a tech diver, and he practices everything, gets everything down. He's got all the highest gear. I mean, the best of everything, tops of everything. I mean, it's absolutely the mint, if you will, of everything that you can own as far as like diving goes, and as far as all the knowledge you can possibly gather. So we're out there swimming at Scripps Pier, not at Scripps Pier. We're doing the canyon. Scripps Canyon is a big drop off. It goes over a mile deep right there.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
All right. Yeah. I'll tell it in 3 minutes for sure. So we dive down. It's like 68 feet of water. Neither one of us have ever been there before. And we're on our way between La Jolla Shores and this pier. And there's this, if you ever see what an antlion looks like, this funnel, there's this big funnel on the sand in the ocean bottom. The visibility is really good, and you could see this funnel. And this funnel, at the bottom of this funnel was this rock, like a big boulder down there. And so we're swimming over, and we're about 40 feet under us, 20 feet beneath us. And my friend, Andrew, he dives all the way down to the bottom. He's on the bottom, like crawling on the sand, right? And I'm about 5 feet off the bottom. We're down, like I said, 68 feet of water, and we're looking at this boulder. And around this boulder are all these skulls, man, of like seals and sea lions and stuff. And then there's this like the pelvic bone, of a seal or sea lion. There's all these bones around this rock, right? And so as we get closer to this boulder, all of a sudden this boulder raises up on its feet and comes up like 2 feet off the ground with eyes flopping up as big as quarters on these eye stalks and a 6-foot wingspan of claws, starts chasing my friend. You just hear him underwater with the bubbles, right? He tries to, he's just coming right to it. We're looking at the rock. We're looking at the bones. I'm actually grabbing one of the skulls. I didn't grab it right then. I was still above. I was about 5 feet above. So you see these arms like flailing around, and it was like a tabletop, like a card table width. I mean, the diameter of this thing. It was huge. Huge. I mean, no crab is supposed to get this big, right? And so while it chases him, he peels off, and it almost got him, but it didn't get him, obviously. And while this is going on, I come like where the skull and stuff is. I grab the skull and I grab the pelvic bone, and I come back up. Oh, anyway. Bottom line is that we encountered this gigantic crab. This crab that wasn't a boulder; it was a
It's
crab.
unbelievable. But you know, when you started to tell me that story, I have a clip ready for the beginning of the show. But I almost switched to the Swingers "You're So Money" clip because he talks about this, how he's a bunny and he's a big bear and he's got these claws. The way you were describing it sounded just like that speech. From,
Right on.
I, hey, and you know what? I think you might have got me wrong. Not on the beach, but the beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know.
Oh, different movie.
Totally
Yeah.
different. So
Because On the Beach does tie in.
I know.
To Blade Runner.
I know. Well, listen here. We're definitely gonna get into Frank Zappa. The beginning of the show before we start getting into any of the movies. So just because I found this piece that he did. It's like a jazz piece, but he's actually really an influential character in the alternative media. I mean, he's talked about biological weapons and all this. He's an intense dude. So I don't know if you know much about him, but
I do actually.
Cool, great. We're gonna jump into him. Do you know about his father? Do you know about the weapons and all that?
I do not know about his father. I do know that he is a extremely intellectual guy, and that he's also a fantastic guitar player. A lot better than people give him credit for.
Wait till you hear this. I got this piece of him doing. Hang on a second. I got been to Kansas City in A minor. It's an unbelievable performance. Okay, so we're getting ready to go here. I gotta call them now, so we're gonna have to be quiet. Please mute up, man, so we don't suck away the audio qualities. We'll try to get going over here.
I'll start recording now.
Okay, cool. Sounds good, man. Let me see if I can find it. Brooks Agnew is on Revolution Radio now. Did you hear me?
I was muted. I saw him on Wednesday. Yeah, I commented in the chat room actually.
He was there. Yeah, he did actually a pretty good show. Okay, here we go. Mute up. All right, YouTube, we're online. So you know what that means? Silence. Man, I'm gonna get that clip, that Swingers clip. I know it's not very exciting. All right, so what that means is we can kind of hear some of the break stuff. For some reason, it doesn't play through. It dies out. But who cares? My name's Jimmy. This is the golf style play-by-play leading up to the show. 2 minutes to go. I am logging into the chat room at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. There's usually 35 people in there, roughly. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe tonight there's nobody. Maybe there's more. Who knows? We can only hope, ladies and gentlemen. Hope and pray that someday there'll be some people. There's no way to know anymore. I've given up. All I care about is whoever it is that's listening to this right now. You're the only person I care about. Don't worry. We got a good show planned. We're not going to leave it hanging. All right, I am clear to go on the chat room. freedomslips.com. Time to smoke a big fat head of weed. One minute. That's right. All right. Let's see here. All right, here we go.
Think you're gonna find when all this shit is over and done? I think you're gonna find yourself one smiling motherfucker. Thing is, Butch, right now, you got ability. But painful as it may be, ability don't last. And your days are just about over. Now that's a hard motherfucking fact of life. But that's a fact of life your ass is gonna have to get realistic about. See, this business is filled to the brim with unrealistic motherfuckers. Motherfuckers who thought their ass would age like wine. If you mean it turns to vinegar, it does. If you mean it gets better with age, it don't. Besides, Butch, how many fights you think you got in you anyway? 2? Boxers don't have an old timers thing.
My name's Jimmy, and Into the Microcosm is on the air. Oh, yeah. Friday night. Let the party begin. That's right. Revolution Radio, Into the Microcosm. My name's Jimmy. I'm going to be your happy, friendly host for the next 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen. 120 minutes never seems to be enough, and that's why tomorrow night, that's right, Saturday night, we're going to be here in Studio B Believe it or not, Stray Cats Saturday night. Epic. Are you there?
I am here.
So what do you think, man? Saturday night. We got Friday, Saturday night, and we are back in business. The late night into the microcosm bookends Friday and Saturday night. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, except this particular Saturday I'm entertaining guests on Maui. So I might have to phone that one in a little bit, but the first our premiere on Saturday. But otherwise, yeah, it's all good. It's going to be great.
Well, don't you worry about a thing because I'll be here and you are there, Epic, as you usually are, floating.
I am always here.
Floating somewhere out in the blue ocean. Mine's Jimmy, like I said. It's into the microcosm. We got a great show planned for you tonight. We are definitely going to be talking about we were kind of getting into paradise a little bit last week, kind of thinking about, what it's like turning it off, Epic, turning off the electricities, turning everything off, and just, getting some like-minded, people together to start your own community somewhere. You get everybody just chips in and you get this real nice chunk of land that you can kick back on. And everybody's got the same kind of mindset, so to speak. So you think, it's going to be like paradise, right?
Yeah. It becomes a tribe, right? It becomes a tribe. It becomes this is our land, and this is our place, and this is our home, and that's true. It's been like that for thousands of years. I mean, and now we don't have that anymore because they redraw the districts now, so to speak. It's all political now. It's all about honing the people into a certain and pigeonholing them. But back in the day, it still could be that way. It still could be that way now. But people are becoming aware of the fact that the availability of that kind of lifestyle is becoming increasingly rare.
Right, and so everybody has this dream of busting into, breaking away, and living someplace, in this utopian sort of. If we could just have our own little area, Epic, we could just rope it off, throw a little few grass huts there, over on the island there with you. Everything would just be all hunky dory, and so that's one of the movies we're going to be getting into tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Is The Beach, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And that's the movie that I'm going to be bringing to the table. Now, the Epic Journeyman, he's got a different movie in his back pocket. So tonight, it's all about Blade Runners and beach bunnies right here on Into the Microcosm. Why don't you give everybody just a little heads up on a teaser, as it were, Epic, on the Blade Runner breakdown, because November is the month that Blade Runner 2019 supposedly happened, the original one, right?
Yeah, the original movie, the Ridley Scott movie, was November 2019. Now the book, it was To Androids Dream of Electric Sleep. Excuse me, Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. That was originally 1992, and it changed to like 2020, I want to say. I think it's 2020. But the movie, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, the one that's iconic in everybody's mind right now, everybody remembers, is November 2019. So we're here. This is it. This is when it's supposed to be happening. There's a lot of parallels going on now that really do tie into the movie. As far as like the building of artificial intelligence controlled robots, androids, they exist. They're real. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, in the tie-ins to the beach, I can totally relate to this because I'm trying to live that lifestyle over here. It's a real thing that I do over here in the islands, and trying to live off the grid a little bit. And I can tell you right now that we'll get into that as well. There's some complications. So
it's
going to be an interesting night.
Yeah, and it's never as easy as people think it is anyways, man. The bottom line, no matter what you do, the bottom line is you got to be able to survive. You got to imagine yourself being able to if you're gonna move out into sort of a situation like that, where you're going out to this place where there's nothing around but you and wilderness, you pretty much got to be the type of person that you don't need anything but the clothes on. I mean, you can even be naked. You'd have to start, even if you had to start off naked, you'd have to be able to be that guy. Like recently, I watched a video of a dude who basically snowmobiles into this area somewhere up in either rural Alaska or Canada somewhere, and he basically comes in with this little trailer thing that he made. He made this little cabin thing that he pulls behind his snowmobile. That's a self-contained unit. It's warm and all this. He heats rocks in buckets, and then he puts these buckets in this little space that he built. But he more or less goes to this site and doesn't leave until he builds himself a cabin. Literally. He's literally chopping trees down, peeling the bark off of it, you know what I mean, and build this thing one at a time. I mean, it is so killer to watch it. Takes a long time, you know. The thing about it is you know, even the simple things that people just take for granted, like they buy some seeds and they figure they're just, you know, they don't ever build a garden or do a garden, but then you know, all of a sudden, one day they think that they're just going to all of a sudden throw some seeds in the ground and everything's going to be hunky-dory. But that's not really the way it goes, is it, Epic?
No, it's not. Not at all. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that. Like, for example, I live in rural Hawaii. I have a house in rural Hawaii. I'm completely off the grid if I want to be. No, I'm not. I have electricity, but I also have solar power. So I can be completely off the grid. And the idea is I want to grow my own food, do my own thing. And sure enough, yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to do that. But, and there's the but, right? You still have to deal with the people who are living there as your neighbors, right? So you're not alone there doing this. And just like if you pick this plot of land somewhere in Alaska or something, you may not be the only person there. That's the whole thing. So you still have to, there's this sociological enigma that everybody has to still deal with, right? Where you have to get along. And if you don't get along, it's just like a tribal culture. And it's not like that here too much. It's been pretty good to me so far. But I'll tell you what, I mean, the dream and the reality are two different things. And you have to, there's a lot more work involved than people think.
I know.
It takes work. It really does. But it's worth it. I think it's worth it. It sure is. I mean, I'm confident, you know, if power goes out tomorrow, I'm fine. You know what I mean? I'll be okay. But
dreams without goals are meaningless. They're just dreams, right. You know. And the thing is like if you think you're gonna just bust out and jump out into living off the grid, there's really so much more to it. I mean, I forget the name of the movie. Sean Penn directed it. It was about a dude who moved up to Alaska and lived in a bus. He ended up dying. But
Into the Wild, is that?
Yeah. See, that was an intense movie. It was a good movie. Sean Penn directed it, like I said. But yeah, what does that guy in is basically, you know, he kills something, but he doesn't do anything with it fast enough before the flies land on it and land on it and you know, put their larvae into the meat. Basically, the meat's no good, right? After that point, you can't eat it. He tried to put it in the water or whatever, but it was too late.
Yeah, well, there's a real good lesson from that. Like, for example, if you're trying to, I'm not going to make a survival show out of this episode, but if you're stuck in a situation, for example, where there's no power, right? You have to prepare, you know. So you can't just go buy penicillin on the street. It's like, not your, hey buddy, want to buy some penicillin? There's nobody out there like that, right? So what you do is, before this ever happens, what you do is you stock up on fish. Aquarium, you know, actual treatment for ichthyosis, and they sell basically as amoxicillin for all practical purposes in these tablets, and you can buy those at the pet store. You stock up on that stuff because that's your antibiotics, And you need those things, because what happened in that movie and what happens to people all the time is you get an infection, you're dead. And I'll tell you what, like here in the islands, staph infection is a very real thing. And you'll have 104, 105 degree fever in a matter of hours, and all of a sudden not realize that you won't even know it. You just get delirious all of a sudden. As I've had staph infection twice. And next thing you know, it's like you're just delirious. You're like, well, why? If you don't even have that moment to question it, let's say you party the night before, you think you're hungover or something, or whatever, it might be, those hours are critical. Those hours are critical. If you don't realize that your foot's swollen up, or that, part of your body is swollen up, and it's, red to the touch, heated to touch, and all these kind of things, and find your way to the thermometer to find out that you really have a fever. Next thing you know, it's 106 degree fever. You're getting brain damage, right? You need penicillin. You need some kind of antibiotic. And in a critical situation where the power's down and you're out alone by yourself somewhere, if you don't have those things, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. Well, so something as simple as aquarium antibiotics that'll work.
And that's one of the things that happens in the movie The Beach, that we're going to be talking about in a bit. But before we get to the beach, we're also going to be talking about somebody that's that people maybe overlook or don't even really know about too much, or because he's gone, or because he had some silly song titles and some silly song lyrics and stuff, that people really didn't pay much attention to the guy. But I kind of wanted to showcase him a little bit tonight. Here on Into the Microcosm, everybody's been getting hammered all week with the politics and everything. And so I thought, for a minute before we get into the beach and then later on Blade Runner, I want to talk about Frank Zappa. What do you think about Frank Zappa, Epic? Where are you at on him? I got a great clip from 1986 when he was on CNN's Crossfire. And he is the conservative in the group, and he is a ripper, believe me, an intellectual, a man's man when it comes to the mind. Epic. What do you think about the Zappa?
My first real introduction to Frank Zappa, I'm embarrassed to say, was in my 20s, back in the 1980s, and I was living in Maui, and my neighbor was a huge Frank Zappa fan. And and that dude was a wild dude. He would like peel off the road and just, you had no idea what that guy was going to do. Unpredictable guy. He'd be blaring Frank Zappa going down Front Street, right? Driving down Front Street. If you've been to Maui, in Lahaina, Front Street's like the tourist, capital. You can't go more than 5 miles an hour down that road on Front Street because it's always been. It's been that's where everybody goes. And so he'd be blaring the Frank Zappa. And if you've ever listened to Frank Zappa, these are songs you assume is by some LSD-ridden, wild person, right? But about that time, I was also really getting. I learned a guitar prior to that, but I wasn't great at guitar because I never practiced. The scales and all that stuff. I thought I could invent it on my own, like a lot of people do when they start playing guitar. And so I realized right away, this guy is a fantastic guitar player. That's what people don't understand. Frank Zappa is a fantastic guitar player, an incredible guitar player. And so, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, he's a fantastic guitar player, but as a musical composer and an arranger of music, he's a genius. I was never personally, a fan of the, different songs that made it onto the radio that belonged to Zappa. I liked a lot of the Zappa that you really didn't hear on the radio. But as far as a composition or as far as a composer, he was a pure genius. And B5 was mentioning he was also anti-drugs, as a matter of fact. So Epic, before we start getting into Frank, because there's a lot to Frank that people don't know, like who his father was. People don't know a lot. Many people don't know that he actually was exposing some of the New World Order stuff.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So if I can interject a little bit.
Please do.
So because I learned him as a guitar player and appreciated him as a guitar player. And I hated his music, by the way. I mean, Don't Let the Yellow Snow I thought was funny. You know, I was in grade school when that came out. I mean, I was literally like in the second, third grade when Don't Let the Yellow Snow Goes As the Huskies Go came out. It was a funny parody song, and everybody played that around, right? But you know, when you listen to him, when you actually try to play music, you understand how good he is, and the whole idea, like Smoke on the Water, talk about Frank Zappa and the Mothers had the greatest place around. Some damn fool burned it to the ground. That's the lyric, I think. Well,
Yeah.
so people know that context, but the thing they don't know is this is the original Alex Jones in a way. I mean, this guy was really on top of the idea. It's like George Carlin. He had George Carlin had a very clever
you're right.
an awareness about this
Good.
kind of thing, about what we call the world order, new world order, whatever we call it today. He totally was aware of this, and he brought it up all the time when he had an
Great.
opportunity, and did it very well. He did it very well. He was very well spoken and intellectual about it.
Great parallel too, because that was what was the comedy group that George Carlin was a part of? I always want to call it the Weathermen. It was something like that. I can't remember. It sounds like one of these terrorist groups from the Obama handler guy. He was in something called the Weathermen, I think.
No. Well, I don't think he was in the Canadian one. Is that what you're thinking about? The Canadian one? I can't remember the name of it either. But that one is pretty famous, and I know our listeners are going to chide us for me not knowing it.
I'm
But that one's pretty famous. But
George Carlin was originally, he was in a group of people, doing a whole satirical thing, but this was like, I want to say early 73, 4, something like that, 6, something in that area. And then, but I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with a little bit of Frank now. So if Frank is like the Dead, some people don't like the Dead, some people love the Dead. Frank's kind of like that. If you don't know Frank, I'm going to introduce you to him in a way that you probably haven't even heard before, if you've ever even heard the name Frank Zappa. Here is Been to Kansas City in A minor. This is kind of I'd call it a rare piece. Here we go. Frank standing up and ripping one off there, right there, but boom.
At the beginning of that piece, he did something that we've talked about, we've hinted at a little bit, and honestly, I have to break it down for people and probably show them on a spectrum analyzer to really appreciate what this is. Subharmonics. So basically, subharmonics manifest themselves when there's a harmonic progression. It could be discordant, because it was at the beginning of that. There's a discordant part, right? You heard that. And what happens is it makes what they call subharmonics music. And the subharmonics are really low frequency. Like a harmonic, let's say it's 60 hertz, and the sixth harmonic's 360 hertz, and on like that, right? So it'll play like that in a 6-string instrument, for example, right? So let's just say that's what it is, as an example. Well, subharmonic is something that develops because it resonates in such a way that there's a low end of that becomes reinforced. We talked about standing waves before. We talked about quite a bit actually, and this is like that. But it's different because what happens is like those two tuning forks hit each other in such a way that it makes a different tone.
Mm-hmm.
This tone is a lower tone that you can't hear. It's too low. It's below your. So it says 20 hertz, right? So that 20 hertz tone is hitting you literally in your alpha wave state. I want to say it's alpha wave at 20 hertz still. I used to have the chart. Yeah,
well,
I don't have it in front
it's
of me
also.
right now. But bottom line is, there you go. He's doing it on purpose.
He is, and it's interesting too, man. It's because it's called the tritone or the devil's interval. We were talking about the devil and Satan last night, and there's the tritone, is that discordant one off note. It's basically every single song you hear at this point coming out of the rock genre, every single song is tritonal. The devil's interval is present in pretty much every single song now. It used to be around here and there, and it made it stand out. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. The beginning of War Pigs by Black Sabbath, that tritonal is actually invoking evil energy. Dun, dun, dun. That's the tritone. And so Zappa was super smart, man. He cropped up just at the same time as a lot of other people cropped up out of the Laurel Canyon, didn't he?
He did. He did. And the thing is, there's a number of intellectual musicians that are known for being intellectual. And I don't think there's anybody more known for being an intellectual musician than Frank Zappa. You really could say this. I mean, if you're suddenly talking about somebody who, through whatever method, brought him to be put in that place, he is that guy. He is a supremely intellectual person, not just an intellectual musician. So you have to wonder, was he one of these guys who was in longitudinal studies? Because I just heard this on the believe it or not, on mainstream news today. They talked about Frederick Terman's longitudinal studies of genius. They actually talked about it today, and I've never heard anybody talk about that in mainstream news before. It was on MSNBC. It was on the radio. I was listening to it driving around.
Yeah, they probably clearly listened to the show. I mean, I swear to
they must. They must.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the most obscure stuff on this show, but somehow it turns up in other people's shows, which is unbelievable. Like the standing wave thing, man, that is just a mind blower to me. But my name's Jimmy. We're blowing minds right here on Revolution Radio in the middle of the night. We're your buddies. We're your pals. We're the guys you know right here every Friday night, 11 Pacific, 2 a.m. Eastern. And tonight we got a whole situation going on. But in the meantime, what we got going on is we're talking about Frank Zappa. And I want to get into Frank Zappa, the man, but because most people don't know about that part of him. But what I also want to talk about is a song called "I Am the Slime of Your Video." Do you remember that song?
I'm sure that I've heard it, but I was not a Zappa fan at the time. Like I said, when I first learned of Zappa, really, I was not a fan at all. I was in Maui, and my neighbor played him all the time, and that's how I got to.
Let me tell you something, Sonny. Don't worry, Jimmy's got your back. Because I just happen to
right on.
I just happen to have "I Am the Slime of Your Video" right here. Now, originally, when Zappa did this song, it was on the original Saturday Night Live with the original cast, and he did this song, and Don Pardo actually read the part that Frank is going to do on the song that I'm going to play. I don't have the Don Pardo one. I'm going to actually play the Frank part where Frank's saying the words. So here we go with Frank Zappa, ladies and gentlemen. "I Am the Slime of Your Video."
Very little has changed. I'm the tool of the government. too, for I am destined to rule and regulate you. I may be vile and pernicious, but you can't look away. I make you think I'm delicious with the stuff that I say. I'm the best you can get. Have you guessed me yet? I'm the slime oozing out from your TV set. You will obey me while I lead you and eat the garbage that I feed you until the day that we don't need you. Don't go for help, no one will heed you. Your mind is totally controlled. It has been stuffed into my mold, and you will do as you are told until the rights to you are sold.
That's right, folks. Don't touch that duck.
Well, I am the slime from the video, oozing along on your living room floor. I am the slime from the video. Can't stop the slime, people look at me go. I am the slime from the video, oozing along on your living room floor. I am the slime from the video.
I am the slime from your video. Epic Journeyman, are you there?
I am here. I'm trying to interact with the chat room over on Freedom Slips.
Oh, good,
You know,
yeah.
It's so hard to get on here sometimes in VR. You guys, if you don't know, I'm doing this completely from virtual reality. I mean, entirely from virtual reality. So like when I have a virtual reality keyboard, it doesn't always come out right. It's really hard sometimes to navigate chat room. But I'm down here. I've been talked to the guys earlier today, and it was pretty cool. We're talking about my guitar I just bought, and yeah, I had
Nice.
some good interaction. So I can't play it like Frank Zappa, but I can play it.
Hey, not very many people can play it like Frank Zappa, but hey, while we're speaking of it, the Epic Journeyman's over in the chat room. Francis 67, RD 47, Basement 5B5. What's up, Spoon Man? Flippy Heart is in there. SJ Visitor Conrad Mantis. Oh, I just lost my screen. Mantis was the last guy I saw. Can you see that in there, Epic, with your thing? I just lost.
I can actually. So let me
the
see.
last person I saw was
scroll up.
Mantis.
So we got Francis, RD47, Basement 5, Flippy, S3, Visitor, Conrad, Mantis, Zaratoth, Lioness, Up. I was talking to Up earlier. He had some questions about my guitar. Simply Red, Zippy, Blasphemous Buddha, and then I'd lose my scroll because
May
there's more people
Street,
there.
Simply Red, In the Kitchen, Zippy 101, Blasphemous Buddha, Zerlias is in there too. All right, so listen, we're talking about the Zapster, Frank Zappa, and there was the Slimer video. Now, he was talking about mind control in that video, right? So he said, you're mind controlled with the stuff that I feed you. And he's talking about the TV. Now, when he wrote this, there was no internet. So I'm sure if he was alive, I'm surprised Dweezil hasn't like redone it. And I am the slime from the internet. I am the slime of the internet.
No, I heard this song. The first time I heard this song was the guy I was telling you about, my neighbor in Lahaina. We're driving down to Suzuki Samurai, driving down Front Street. He blared it full blast. I was so embarrassed, man, because that's not a song you want to play full blast, probably. And he was an LSD guy, right? And so this is not Frank Zappa, my neighbor, right? And I'll admit that I probably partook a little bit in this myself at that time, back in the 80s. And this it totally made sense to me, actually. the whole thing made sense. To where when I listened to it later, I think, well, he says he's never done drugs, right? That Frank Zappa never did drugs, just like supposedly Ted Nugent never did drugs.
You're not doing drugs right now, are you?
Of course not.
Okay, good.
But back in 1987, I probably was. I mean, it was for science, of course, strictly for science. Well, and I do want to mention something about that. Like for example, when I first learned about shamans using substances to expand their consciousness, it was big to me back in high school. So it wasn't like for people to just get high like when you use mushrooms or mescaline or LSD, it was actually to expand your consciousness, right? Now that sounds
Well,
funny
I think
today, but back then it really was a big deal.
your consciousness is expanding way beyond the topic of Frank Zappa and his slime of the video. Now, I just want to make sure, Epic, are you there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
All right.
I'm just saying.
No, I
this
know.
particular song. Yeah.
Dude, I'm just pulling your chain. Listen. Okay, listen. So listen. People don't realize Frank Zappa was was about as a conservative as you could possibly be, and he also, like I said a while back, okay, was one of these characters that rose out of the Laurel Canyon. Now, you know, we've done lots of shows about the Laurel Canyon. You know, there's, you know, the point is he happens to be one of those people whose father was involved in the military industrial complex.
Military intelligence. Most of those people, absolutely.
And we're going to get into some of that, but before we do, you know, CNN used to not be that bad of a network at one point. You know, it really wasn't. It was just really, it was middle of the road. But they had some characters on there, and they used to have a show called Crossfire where they would just put two conservatives and two liberals together, and they would just they would duke it out. Right, they would duke it out. Okay, so now let's cut to 1986 because the big deal at that time was Tipper Gore and labeling CDs with explicit on there. And so they got Frank Zappa on here. They thought they were just gonna get him on here, and they were just gonna piss all over his leg, and because he's just a rocker, he's just a stupid rocker or whatever, a stupid musician. But they found out they messed with the wrong dude.
Crossfire on the left, Tom Braden. On the right, Robert Novak. In the Crossfire, Washington Times columnist John Lofton and rock musician Frank Zappa.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. What you've got here is suggestive, and I don't find it objectionable. But when you actually listen to the words of the songs, you get a shock. Personally, I find some of them in such bad taste as to make...
Yeah, for whatever reason, it's jammed up here. Hang on a second. My name's Jimmy. It's Into the Microcosmos Revolution Radio. It's the middle of the night, and you have found Into the Microcosm. You must have gotten small enough to get through the door. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in here. Epic, are you there? For some reason,
I'm here.
I have too many windows open, and